Morning, everybody. We were in Tonga 2-3 years ago for a mission trip. And I got to spend most of one day at a little hut on a beach, just reading and working on the sermon. And I just made a little vow to myself, someday I'm going to retire and I'm going to get a little speck of land here and build a little hut right on the beach. And I'm going to go down there for a month a year and just sit in that little hut and read and hang out. Until I found out that they don't allow people from outside to buy land. So I can't do it. Except my son is dating a Tongan girl. He's not here, all right? We just keep this to ourselves. Nathan, to ourselves. Somehow people always want to tell someone, did you hear what your father said about you today? And her father said to me on a mission trip in Thailand, he whispered to me, I have land in Tonga. And if those two kids get married, they can have some of that land right on the beach. Now, he has not told Alex that. And my question is, would it be a sin for me with 40 years of spiritual wisdom and counseling technique to sneak that into my son to say, if you get married, we get a house on the beach? Would that be all right? Bono is now raising money for AIDS research. They call it buying red, you know. But they cannot really get people to donate just because there's, hungry kids in Africa, or 11 million kids got HIV. So they got to offer you, if you'll just give some money, you have a chance to have tea with Julia Roberts. The little reward, if you'll just give us money. And Pastor Tony asked me to wrestle with that question today. Is it wrong to buy into Christianity in order to get some of the rewards? Magic. Is it wrong to get into Christianity so that you can have a mansion someday and be on streets of gold and live for 1,000 years? And all the food and the parties, and you get to see all the people who have died. I get to see my father. Is it wrong to want to be a Christian? So that, if I, then this. If we want you to come to church, we can't get you to come to church just for preaching. And we got to have food and a band and hug you at the door and have Super Bowl parties and go skiing. And we got to do all this other stuff. And there are people all the time who say, no, stop all that. Why are we paying for all that? Jesus should be enough all by himself. Why isn't that enough? I was a good golfer when I was young. And won tournaments. I have trophies. But the last time I played in a real tournament with all the pastors in Oregon, in the first hole in front of 50 pastors, I shoot a hole in one. And all the pastors are around and high-fiving and cheering me on. And there's two non-Adventist guys in a cart over here waiting to play. And they said, if that's what it takes, we'll convert. If we get the rewards. In Oprah, they call it The Secret. And there are all these people on Oprah's show for years. If you just have faith in God and if you believe and you want something, the law of attraction, it will come to you. You will be blessed. And Joel Osteen and T.D. Jakes and all the other TV preachers read all these promises. And if you'll just come to Christ and open your heart up for God, he wants to bless you. Is it wrong to come to Christ in order to get their rewards? And Tony asked me to talk about these two stories in Acts chapter 8. The first one is about a man named Simon. It says a man named Simon had practiced magic and amazed all the people in Samaria. And now these people are getting baptized, and it says Simon himself believed and was baptized. Okay, very good. But he's been doing magic, and now he sees Peter and John laying their hands on people, and they all of a sudden have the Holy Spirit, and they're speaking in tongues, and he said, give me that. And it says he offered them money. Give me that. I want to do that. And Peter just goes off, and he said, may your money perish with you because you thought you could buy the gift of God with money. Your heart is not right with God. Now Simon is scared. He said, okay, pray for me. Can't pray for himself. Pray for me that God won't do those bad things to me. Punish me. And for 1,000 years in the Middle Ages, whenever somebody tried to buy the papacy or to be a bishop, they called it simony from this man. Come to Christ so you can get something. And over the years, I've had quite a few guys come to church and they see a pretty girl somewhere and they'll begin to get started, but they're not part of church. And they'll come over to me and say, Pastor Dan, would it help if I got baptized? Or I baptized people who I think later I figured out they just wanted to help them get into Loma Linda, going to medical school. It's not God for God. How many people have had me, please just come pray for Pastor Dan? And they want me to pray for something, for to be healed or to make money or for their business or for something. They don't want God for him. They want him for what they can get, for the rewards. Is it okay? Why can't God just have us for him without having to offer us mansions and streets of gold and miracles and stuff? Famous Christian philosopher named Kierkegaard, he wrote a parable about a king who fell in love with a girl a couple villages over. And he wants her, but he's scared to death is that if he shows up as a king, it'll skew the deal and she'll be confused and maybe want to be the queen and have a big house and servants and money and all the rest and not love him. And so he takes off all the royal robes and he grows a beard and he goes there with no army and no soldiers and no nothing. And she falls in love with him. Then he takes her and shows her what he has. And is that how God really feels? He would love us to want him just for him. Not for mansions and streets of gold and magic and for the girls and for the food or whatever else. Just for him. And then the second story that Tony wanted me to look at is the one of Philip. Philip is a deacon and he's an evangelist for God. And he sees this Ethiopian man riding along. He's been from Ethiopia to Jerusalem, probably a Jew. He works for the government. And now he's reading the book of Isaiah and the scroll in the chariot. And Philip says, do you understand what you are reading? And the Ethiopian said, how can I understand unless somebody will explain it to me and interpret it for me? And so Philip gets up in this chariot and he begins to explain. He's reading from the book of Isaiah, the famous chapter of Isaiah 53 and the suffering servant. And he talks about how he is taken like a lamb or a sheep to the slaughter. And now it says he gave him the good news about Jesus. The one he's talking about is Jesus. The Jews don't accept it. My world religions class this week, we're going to the synagogue, but they don't accept Jesus as fulfilling that yet. Still looking. But Philip says, this is Jesus. God himself came down from heaven. He emptied it. He gave up everything. And he came down and they whipped him and they beat him and they killed him. But then he rose from the grave and we are followers of Jesus. And this Ethiopian eunuch is blown away and he says, I want him. I want him. I want him. He doesn't need any girls or mansions or miracles or streets of gold or anything else. I want him. That's what I want. That's what I'm looking for. Looking for Jesus. And Tony asked the question, is that really how it's supposed to be? We come to Jesus not for the bag of tricks, not for mansions or miracles or magic or anything else. I just want him. But the Bible is full of these promises about rewards. Revelation 22 verse 12, behold, I am coming soon and my reward is with me. Matthew 5, great is your reward in heaven. He talks about it. He says, if you'll just follow me, you can be the head, not the tail. You can be the top and not the bottom. He says, if you'll just give your life to me, whatever you lose, I'll make it up to you 100 to 1. You'll never thirst again. You'll never be hungry again. John 10:10, I came to give life and life more abundantly. These great, great promises. Psalm 23, thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I got a wedding invitation this week. Go to a wedding, someone my age. We were together 40 years ago, seminary, pastors, all our lives. He and I went to a basketball game in Chicago. I've told the story 1,000 times. There were two of us for the Portland and 20,000 for Chicago, standing back and forth. Finally, at the end of the game, our team won, and there's two of us standing and 20,000 silent. And I thought, this is the way it's supposed to be. We are followers of Jesus. We are supposed to win. It is supposed to bring good things to us. And God should be doing miracles and blessing us and taking care of us. That's the way it's supposed to be. Rewards. Why would he put all these rewards and verses in the Bible if he doesn't want us to think about it? No, just take it out of your mind. C.S. Lewis wrote a sermon about this in a book called The Weight of Glory. Famous, famous sermon. Standing in front of those kids in Oxford, England, and he says in this sermon, I've gone all the way through the New Testament, and here's what I find about heaven. God boils it all down to, number 1, you'll be with Christ. Number 2, you'll be like him. Number 3, there's some fame or glory. Number 4, there's going to be a banquet and eating. And number 5, we're going to be judging. And then C.S. Lewis asks, if number 1 is all that we're supposed to think about, why does he waste time putting 2 to 5 into the Bible? Why is it there? If just being with him is supposed to be enough. Why did God have to talk about gold and glory and mansions if it's enough just to be with him? Because we don't get to see him now. We don't get to hear him. We don't get to be with him. And so we can't really get what it means to be with God. And so God has to use these other things to get us to come to be with him. And so he uses the rewards, and we use food and music and things in church as the bridge to get people to come to God, and then maybe they'll get to know God. And so he uses mansions and 1,000 years and no more tears to get us to come, and then we can be with him. So I tried to think of a couple illustrations. Most of you know that Nathan is my nephew, my brother's son. And I'm sure they tried to get him into music, but there came a time he began to play the guitar. High school? High school, maybe. So I was a last year, and he was going to the academy. And then all of a sudden, he and his brothers had a little band. And every Friday night, they had a little deal. My brother started a little church in Rancho Cucamonga, little tiny group. And I had to go over there and preach. And this band would play, my nephews. They were terrible. Terrible. Just terrible. Just a racket. We used to tease them, there's garage bands. You are working up to getting to be a garage band. You're not there yet. Garage band. That's where people start with music. They don't know what great music is. They don't know the pleasure of making great music. And you got to bribe them. If you practice, I'll give you M&Ms. If you practice, I'll give you cookies. If you practice, I'll take you to Disneyland. because they are not motivated by the music itself. But gradually Nathan began to get it, and he asked us all to donate for a guitar. Is that the same guitar now? I contributed to that guitar. Every time he plays, I am a part of that. But eventually Nathan got it. Now we don't have to offer him M&Ms and cookies in Disneyland anymore. Because he knows this is what Nathan was made in this world to do, is to be a praise leader and a worship leader. And gradually the need for the rewards goes away. We came over from Thailand. We got to San Francisco airport, and my grandparents brought a bowl of strawberries with sugar on it, ready for strawberry shortcake. We went to a restaurant, and here we were. We had never seen or heard of strawberries before. Mangoes we know. We did not know what strawberries were. And they tried to give us strawberry shortcake. We said, no. And my parents were embarrassed. And they whispered to us, if you'll just eat the strawberry, try one. We'll give you ice cream. Okay, we'll try one strawberry. So get ice cream. And then we tried strawberries. And no one has to promise me ice cream to get me to eat strawberries anymore. The rewards on us, because we understand the strawberries now. When I try to get people to go on a mission trip, they've never been. They don't know what it's like. They don't know the rewards, the interior rewards. And so we have to talk to them about stuff like, we'll take you to Taj Mahal. And we'll take you bungee jumping. We'll take you to zip lining. We'll take you to beaches. We'll take you to all these things that we can do. And we'll go dune buggy riding in Dubai. And we can ride elephants in Thailand. You can eat Thai food 3 times a day. But after we take them the first time, the next time we don't have to talk about all that other stuff anymore. Because now they know. They know what it's like to baptize 1,000 people. They know what it's like to build a church and give that to a church. They know what it's like to go help kids in an orphanage. They now have it pure. They don't need. We may still go to those things, but that's not why they go on the trip anymore. But it's what we have to do the first time. And God uses the rewards as the bridge to get us to come to Him. And C.S. Lewis goes now into this book called The Weight of Glory. And he wrestles with this whole idea that when we get to heaven, we're going to have fame and glory. He says, it's not fame with people. It's fame and glory with God. He says, this glory for an inspection before God. And here we are in this inspection. But this glory is the promise that because of Jesus and what Jesus did on the cross for us, you and I will survive this examination before God. And that somehow, at the end of that examination, we will please God. In the same way that Jesus, when he came out of the water of the baptism, heard his Father say, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. You and I will hear that from God. We will find out that God is blessed with us. He knows our name. He knows who you are. He has a mansion in heaven prepared for you. He can hardly wait to do 1,000 years with you together in heaven. And he says, well done, come on in. That's the glory. The glory of God. He talks about the story of the bridegroom in Matthew chapter 25. When 5 are ready and they get in, but 5 are not ready and they don't get in, there's the door closed. They knock on the door and a voice says, don't know you. He said it'd be the worst thing in the world to be on the outside of that door, to be rejected, to be exiled, to be ignored. You don't matter, you don't count, you are nothing anymore. But he said, on the other hand, it will mean everything when that door opens and someone says, come on in. And we are acknowledged by God and accepted and hugged by God. And God says, well done, welcome home, and we're going to do 1,000 years together. One of the most famous quotes in C.S. Lewis is this quote: at present we are on the outside of the world, the wrong side of the door. But all the leaves of the New Testament are rustling with the rumor that it will not always be so. Someday, God willing, we shall get in. Do you hear that? You shall get in. Then it doesn't matter the streets of gold and the mansions. Doesn't matter. We're in with him. But it doesn't just start there. It starts here. This process of moving from the rewards to him, it begins here. We were having supper last night with my nephew and Hilda. It's his birthday. And I was thinking about when Hilda and I were first dating 30-some years ago. And after about 4 or 5 months, she gave me a picture that I still treasure. And I went away to New Orleans for the General Conference session in 1985. We were just in love and beginning to talk about where this might go. And it's all I had was her picture. This is before cell phone, before email. All I had was this picture. And every day as we drove across the desert, I had this picture. That's her picture. But then when we came back, and I could go down to Glendale and see her face to face, the picture now is not so important anymore. It's her, herself. And that's what C.S. Lewis says. There comes a time. Maybe you start with the picture, but eventually the picture is replaced by the original. We don't have to go by the rewards. You're not drawn to Christ because of the music or because of the food or because of the girls or because the pastor gives you a hug at the door or because of the Super Bowl party. You are in because of Jesus. It's him. And we go from Simon, who says, I'll pay you, I want that, to the Ethiopian eunuch who says, I want him. I want him. And if I can end with one, maybe a little risky illustration, but I hope you will understand it in the best sense. I mean it. And if we have children here, if we can just use a little euphemism here, can we just say the physical side of love? All right? You all understand. And you're sitting in a room somewhere, and all of a sudden these people that were just other human beings all of a sudden are different. And there's something that kicks in, and you look at one of them and you'll say, I want to know that one. They call it desire. Desire. And you look at this other person, and then you begin to say, okay, and I get your phone number, and what's your name? And you begin to say, where are you? And you go out to eat, and you watch movies, and you walk the beach. And something goes in called desire. They talk about it being like the gasoline that is poured on a fire to get it started. It's not the whole relationship, but it is what gets it started that makes you want to get started in the first place. And you look forward and you imagine and you fantasize, and finally you stand in front of a preacher and you make promises and you say, I do, and you sign and you take a ring and you say, I will be with you forever. And then once you've made promises, you go away on a honeymoon and you get the rewards because you made promises. And it's very special. But gradually over 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, it changes. And now you got to pay a mortgage, and you got to raise your kids, and you got to do stuff. And gradually there comes a day when the kids graduate and move away, and your house is paid for, and now it's just you and this other person. And somehow these rewards that God put into the system to get you into the relationship, they're still there. But it is not the center of the relationship anymore. And now this relationship is just this person, themselves, for who they are. The physical side was wonderful and it's still there. But gradually it defaults over to the soul of this other person that you get to be with forever. And my answer to Tony is something like this. Yes, God uses heaven and miracles and mansions. And He uses food and music and many other rewards to get you to come to Christ. And yes, we will still have the mansions and we will still have the miracles, and I still want the 1,000 years in heaven. But eventually, all that is secondary. And all that you care about is Him. Him. And we have gone from Simon, I want that, to the Ethiopian, I want Him. Amen? Him. God bless you.